Genshin Impact is a game with a tremendous number of mysteries, more so than most other open-world RPGs out there. While you can easily argue that the overabundance of these mysteries is one of Genshin's primary goldmines for player retention by virtue of maintaining consistently strong discussion around the game's lore and story, it's almost equally easy to point out how some of them are oddly unnecessary. One such unanswered question pertains to the nature of two of the most important characters on Teyvat, the Electro-Archons of Inazuma, the Raiden Twins, Baal and Beelzebul. And it is the fact that 4 years after the release of Inazuma in version 2.0, we still somehow have no clue what Makoto and A are even supposed to be. This is really weird when you put it into perspective, not only because A and Makoto are Archons, but also because when it comes to all other Archons, we do actually know what kind of creatures they are and what species they belong to. Egeria is a primordial heart, a pure elemental being created by the Shade of Life. Barbatos is a wind wisp who was potentially created by the Shade of Time. Mavuika, Shabalanque, and all Pyro-Archons in between them are humans. Fossalors was one of Egeria's Oceanid familiars, while both of Buur's incarnations, Rukkhadevata and Kusanali, are avatars of Irminsul. Even Morax is still in a much better position than the Raiden Twins, given that we have extremely clear visual and thematic indicators of what he may be. For instance, we know that Zhongli is at bare minimum a dragon-looking Adeptus, with emphasis on the word looking. Yet, for A and Makoto, the best we've got is still this.
Oh, dear me. That didn't frighten you, did it? After all, you are in the presence of the most supreme and terrifying incarnation of lightning in the whole of Teyvat.
Yeah, that alone is not gonna cut it in the great year of our Lord 2025. We learned that the ancient dragons were part of an advanced civilization and met one of the first descenders 4 shining shades before knowing what the Raiden Twins even are. It's time we get some answers, and you came to the right place, for what is a lore theory if not an attempt to answer the unanswered? Which is precisely what I'm going to do in this video. Let me cook. But first, for my proposition to be logically cohesive and make some amount of sense, we're going to have to go over Inazuma's core history and design symbolism so that we can put them into their appropriate context. And what better place to start than the history of A and Makoto? The Raiden Twins perfectly embody the concept of yin and yang, a balance evident in their roles following Baal's ascension into an Archon and the establishment of the Inazuma Shogunate. Since Makoto was never particularly skilled in battle, she fulfilled her divine mandate by overseeing the nation's political and logistical affairs, serving as both the religious figurehead of Inazuma and a symbol of her people's faith. A, on the other hand, was, and still is, the strongest warrior in Inazuma's history, at least as far as we know, making her the perfect counterpart to Makoto, and thus did Beelzebul become Baal's shadow, her Kagemusha. A's prowess in warfare and swordsmanship inspired Inazuma's 5 great bladesmithing schools, collectively known as the Raiden Gokaden, one of which forged Ayato's katana, the Harange Pakufutsu, while Inazuma's samurai also traced their martial techniques back to the almighty Shogun. However, just like her sister, Beelzebul isn't without her own shortcomings. For all her skill in cooking enemies on the battlefield, A is completely clueless when it comes to cooking in the kitchen. And look, I know what you're thinking. Shottomate, let her cook, she can learn. Well, sure, except she's physically incapable of cooking in-game. That's gotta be really rough for someone with a sweet tooth for delicious pastries and desserts. Fortunately for A, Sakurako and Tokyo Treat offer the perfect solution for this dilemma, and they happen to be the sponsors of this video. For anyone looking to try out popular, authentic, and freshly prepared Japanese snacks, sweets, pastries, and tea, then Sakurako and Tokyo Treat are pretty much the premier options out there. Since their mission is to help everyone experience these Japanese snacks from the comfort of their home and delivered right to their doorsteps. These Japanese snack boxes are as simple as it gets, just a collection of good snacks delivered straight to you with zero nonsense. And I can say that with confidence because Sakurako and Tokyo Treat are confident in what they offer, hence why they sent me 2 of their boxes to show you guys. First, we have Tokyo Treat, a subscription-based box filled with exclusive Japanese snacks. Now, what I like about Tokyo Treat, and this is a very smart decision on their end, is the fact that many of the snacks found in each of their boxes at any given month are limited time onlys, like this Kit Kat for example. And by this, I don't mean limited time only for you, no. The snacks in Tokyo Treat are limited in Japan itself, so when you get one of their boxes, you essentially have the same purchasing opportunity as if you were in Japan. If you think about it, the reason they do this, and why I said it's a clever move, is to highlight their commitment to their motto of helping you experience Japan from your home. On top of that, each Tokyo Treat box comes with a customized booklet detailing all of the snacks you get with a bunch of fun cultural facts about Japan every month. On the other hand, if you are more like me and prefer classical sweets and pastries, then Sakurako's got your back. And I really love this one for several reasons. Right off the bat, as soon as I opened the box, Sakurako put a smile on my face mainly because of the strawberry daifuku, which is easily one of my favorite confections of any cuisine period. So finding it was a pleasant surprise to say the least. In my opinion though, Sakurako's biggest selling point is that it comes with monthly themed boxes based on Japan's seasons, each with 20 unique, authentic and traditional snacks made by local Japanese artisans. And just like with Tokyo Treat, Sakurako provides a booklet describing every item along with the names of all the shops and snack makers who prepared those items for you. To put the cherry on top, Sakurako gives you special souvenirs such as cups and tableware themed around every month. For example, I got this nice Nishinji Ori coaster, which as the booklet explains is a type of handmade woven fabric carrying over 1,000 years of Japanese craftsmanship history. The Sakurako booklet also has a bunch of other neat historical details regarding classical Japanese history, which I may or may not use in my future lore videos, who knows. Some of these facts were actually pretty interesting. Now, you could be extra fancy and use the coaster while drinking the tea Sakurako gives you, but honestly, I just take the souvenir for what it is. It's a nice little gift which you get to keep each month. Overall, Tokyo Treat and Sakurako are both excellent options. Everything I received was freshly made and sealed in Japan. Their subscription plans are also very consumer friendly, allowing you to pause or cancel at any time. If you ever need to skip a month, that option is always available, which I think is a very respectable approach. So, if you want to get some top quality Japanese snacks, use code MYNAME4NOW on the screen right now to receive $5 off of your first Sakurako or Tokyo Treat boxes through my links in the description. Thank you to Tokyo Treat and Sakurako for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back to our pastry-loving Shogun. As I mentioned earlier, A and Makoto perfectly complement each other as yin and yang, light and shadow. They were intentionally designed to be two sides of the same coin, to represent the two perspectives of eternity. Makoto was the god of eternal transience, the change of every moment in space and time, while A is the god of eternal stillness, a single, perfect, and unchanging eternity. And here's why I wanted to make this point clear. As you can see, Baal and Beelzebul's ideals align with the domain of Celestia's god of time, Ishtaroth, one of the 4 shining shades of the first Descender. This connection is further reinforced in the game when Beelzebul hints that Baal must have received help from Ishtaroth. After all, it was only with her aid that Beelzebul was able to plant Baal as a seed in the future, allowing the sacred sakura tree to grow in the past and reinforce Inazuma's ley lines during Kanria's cataclysm. Nonetheless, aside from the fact that A and Makoto's ideal of eternity falls under the domain of time, we actually have nothing substantial to establish a meaningful connection between Ishtaroth and the Raiden Twins. Yet, it is still worth noting that the first Descenders' shades, including Ishtaroth, have historically been active participants in the creations of several other demon gods, such as Egeria, Barbatos, and most likely Kapatsir with Ronova. A great analogy for this can surprisingly be found in Demon Slayer, because in that story, while Kibutsuji Muzan is the progenitor and father of all demons, his 2 highest upper moons, Michikatsu and Doma, are also able to propagate his kind by creating other demons through their blood, since their blood is ultimately the demon blood which Muzan gave them. So, by applying this analogy to Genshin, Muzan's counterpart would be the Usurper King, who is the progenitor and master of all demon gods, while the king's four shades are akin to the upper moons. They are extremely powerful demon gods who possess enough of the usurper king's essence to bestow divinity upon other creatures and ascend them into the status of demon gods. But as I was saying, it's almost impossible to prove that Istaroth created Baal and Beelzebul at the moment, so trying to figure things out from this position will lead us to a dead end. Instead, let's shift our efforts to a better framework of analysis. Since Makoto is a waifu who turns into a tree, how about we check what another tree waifu says about Raiden? I am of course talking about the best tree waifu, Greater Lord Rukkhadevata. In the description of the wind glider, Wings of the Forest, the developers share a Sumerian fable. It tells of a great artisan, Master Firnas, who dreams of the Dendro Archon, and she tells him a story where Morax, Baal, and Barbatos debate amongst each other about whose element is the most essential to existence. In Rukkhadevata's story, which is in Master Firnas's dream, who is in the Academia's fable, Inazuma's Archon is described as a piece of wood infused with electro. And while the most logical assumption here is that the fable is referring to the Shogun puppet and not one of the Raiden twins, this doesn't actually make any sense. You see, the vast majority of people don't know that Beelzebul is the Electro-Archon. Almost everyone still believes the Archon is Baal. Furthermore, not even the people of Inazuma realize that Beelzebul, whom they think is Baal, resides within the Shogun puppet. In other words, not only is the public unaware that Beelzebul has taken on Baal's identity, but the person they see isn't even the same one whom they think is Baal. So, what's going on in the Academia's fable? How do they know that Inazuma's Archon is an electro-infused wooden object? I highly doubt that the fable in the Wings of the Forest was written after the traveler's encounter with Beelzebul. This wouldn't make sense for so many reasons. Rather, it seems like Rukkhadevata was telling Master Firnas of a story which takes place in the future. If so, when she mentions wood infused with electro, is she referring to the Shogun puppet or the sacred Sakura tree which is also infused with Makoto's electro? Probably the former, since it would be weird to have Zhongli and Venti talking to a tree, right? Yeah, anyway, this is another dead end because unfortunately the electro-infused wood mentioned in the Wings of the Forest is obviously meant to be the Shogun puppet, and since the Shogun is a mechanical creation of Beelzebul, we can't really utilize her in furtherance of our goal, which is to determine what A and Makoto are. Or can we? Well, yes, the answer is we can. Although what we really want won't be in the Shogun's physical composition, we're gonna have to examine other aspects of her nature, and now, the real theory will begin. Both Beelzebul and the Shogun state how the latter is the perfect vessel of the Electro-Archon, a warrior literally crafted for the sole mission of preserving and upholding the ideal of eternity. Hence why the Shogun refers to herself as the Guardian of Eternity, the everlasting law, during her battle with A in Makoto's realm of consciousness. I specifically want to focus on the form which the Shogun takes in that fight, the Magatsumitaki Narukami no Mikoto. Alright, let me quickly get this out of the way. The Shogun's form is a clear reference to Raiden Maze Hersher of Thunder from Honkai Impact 3rd, but that's just one aspect of her design, and there are other really interesting ones that I want to cover. By the way, I promise you this is going somewhere and I think most of you guys are gonna like the destination. But first, I need to outline the logic behind my conclusion so that what I'm saying makes sense. Let's start... you know what? Screw it, I'll just tell you right now. I think A and Makoto are not necessarily angels, but some kind of elemental life form that's very closely tied to angels. And before that one guy goes ballistic in the comments, calm down, here's the explanation. Let's start with her horns. Once again, obvious Raiden Mei reference, but that's not all. If you take a closer look at them, you will notice that the Shogun's horns aren't the same Oni or Asura horns which Mei typically has in her other variations. Instead, the Shogun's horns are ornaments which protrude from the side and curve forward almost akin to the horns of a bull or a ram. Aside from being taken from the lesser key of Solomon's Baal, Makoto's demon name, Baal, comes directly from the Canaanite Phoenician god of lightning and war, Baal Haddad, an extremely important and extremely influential ancient deity who was symbolized by the bull and the ram. Oh, and when I say Phoenician, I am talking about what's called in English the Phoenician civilization, who inhabited the ancient Levant. As for Canaan, the pronunciation for that one should be along the lines, well, it would be Canaanite, so Canaan, but bro, that sounds so weird. This is basically the same thing that happens with Ochima and Amphorius, where if you don't speak Greek, or a language that has the same vocals as Greek, you are forced into saying Ochima instead of Ochima. Anyway, the point I was going to make before my language tangent is that the god Baal eventually became interchangeable with the demon Beelzebul by the followers of the Abrahamic religions. The full explanation behind why and how this happened is really complicated. And I mean really complicated. Like several hours worth of historical, political, social, religious, and geographical discourse worth of complicated. So we are definitely not going to get into that. Long story short, even though A's demon name, Beelzebul, does not exist in the lesser key of Solomon as Baal does, the fact that Baal and Beelzebul were historically interchangeable with context in mind aligns with how the demon name Baal was interchangeably used by both A and Makoto. After all, the people of Inazuma know Beelzebul only as Baal. There is also this whole thing with Makoto being the sun and A being the moon, since A is Makoto's shadow, and then you have the demon Beelzebul who became the politically crafted dark side of the god Baal. Cool stuff. It's important to think about, given how the Shogun with her horns embodies the divine aspect of Baal despite being created in A's image. Now, keep the horns in mind, I will come back to them in a bit, but before I do, I want to point out the other major design symbol used in the Shogun's Magatsu Mitake form. The myriad of eyes found on the hands she summons. There are two types of eyes on the Shogun's hands, and they're different enough to the point where the distinction between them is important to mention. First are the eyeballs on her sword arm. This is a reoccurring design which Hoyoverse's developers utilize in a couple of their other games. The most obvious one is Zenless Zone Zero, with all the arms that Bringer summons in his sacrifice form, including an almost identical sword arm to the one which the Shogun has with the cursed katana and the eyeballs. Two other examples from Star Rail are the eyes on the arms of the Abundance Aeon Yautja and the item Empyrean Gaze, given to you by the Voice of the Tides on Amphorius, which is made up of the eyes that Zagreus stole from the great Sky Titan Aquila. The other type of eyes that the Shogun has are these ones on the palms of her summoned hands, and while they are also a reoccurring symbol used in Hoyoverse's other games, they have a very significant meaning in Genshin. Many of you must have already realized that these exact same palm eyes are found on the Hydro Dragon Sovereign Neuvillette, and I don't think this is a coincidence. We know that the Primordial One and the Four Shades usurped the functions and roles of the ancient dragons. This is a topic I recently went over in great detail in these two videos right here. Well, another theory that I have suggested several times before is the possibility that the Moon Sisters in the ancient past were allied with the Dragon King Nibelung, possibly even being dragons themselves. And following the Incandescent Ode of Resurrection, the plausibility of this hypothesis has been tremendously reinforced by the lore revelation Mavuika provides to the Traveler when she tells them that according to the Fatui's intel, the shattered moon beyond the firmament once belonged to the ancient dragons. Now, there is more to this lore reveal than what I am going to discuss in this video, but in the interest of time and simplicity, what we care about is the possibility that the Moon Sisters, Arya, Sonnet, and Kanon may have very well been directly related to the ancient dragons. The reason this is important for understanding the origins of A and Makoto is that the palm eye symbol on the Shogun puppet and Neuvillette is directly derived from the Eye of Enlightenment, found on Bodhisattvas, symbolizing wisdom and spiritual insight in Buddhism and Japanese philosophy. However, a very similar looking but different palm eye symbol known as the Khamsa is found in the Middle East and North Africa. And the earliest known depiction of this symbol can be traced back to the ancient city of Carthage, which in turn was a Phoenician colony in Tunisia. In case you don't know, Phoenicians were a group of Semitic people who arose around 3,500 years ago in ancient Lebanon. Now, for all intents and purposes, the Phoenicians were culturally identical to the Canaanites. They were descendants of the Canaanites, they worshipped the same gods as the Canaanites, most notably Baal, and they even called themselves Canaanites. Phoenicia was actually a nickname given to them by the Greeks, derived from the Greek word phoenique, meaning purple. This name was in reference to the famous Phoenician purple dye, which they produced from the murex sea snail and traded extensively with the Greeks. This fact is relevant not only because the electro element is purple, but also because Raiden, who is named after the Phoenician god Baal, is very purple in her design. The Phoenicians were also seafaring people, and so when they colonized the Mediterranean, they carried their gods and culture with them, hence why historians believe that the earliest depictions of the palm eye found in Carthage were brought over by the Phoenicians. Back then, the palm eye was representative of the goddess Tanit, the patron deity of Carthage and the consort of their supreme deity, Baal Hamon, who in turn is a fusion of the Phoenician god Baal and the ancient Egyptian god Amun. Now, do you guys remember way earlier in the video when I said that Makoto is the sun while A is the moon? Well, as it turns out, in ancient Carthage, Tanit was the goddess of the lunar cycle and her symbol was the crescent moon. Considering everything we have discussed, this might explain why Genshin's developers chose to have Baal's sister, Beelzebul, form a crescent moon during her charged attack animation. I've also seen some people claim that the Phoenicians adopted the palm eye symbol from Mesopotamian amulets of the goddess Ishtar. While this would be really cool since it allows us to tie everything back to the relationship A and Makoto have with Ishtaroth, I couldn't find any credible historical sources supporting this claim. Therefore, I doubt that Hoyoverse's developers had this in mind when they designed the Raiden Shogun. All things said and done, the Shogun provides us with two major design elements which can potentially help us understand what A and Makoto are: the horns and the eyes. So let me ask you this. Where else on Teyvat does the symbolism of eyes and horns appear so prominently? Natlan's Mictlan tribe, the Masters of the Night Wind. The Masters of the Night Wind are known for their prowess at communicating with the Wyobs and Seelies of the Night Kingdom, the most important of whom is the Lord of the Night, the angel Yualtikuten. Another important angel to keep in mind is Nabu Malikata, whom we know had a pair of horns based on Nilu's attire, which is designed in her image. Thus, it is unsurprising that the Mictlan incorporate horns all over their tribe, from the horns around their Wyob's obsidian totem to the structures they build and even the devices they make, such as the Spirit Speaker Stone which Sitlali crafted. This matters a lot, since Nabu Malikata was known as the Mistress of Sweet Dreams, and Yualtikuten is the Lord of the Night Kingdom, a ley-line realm containing dreams and memories. As a goddess, A is closely tied to the symbolism of eyes. Her elemental skill creates a chakra ring known as the Eye of Stormy Judgment, a clear nod to Raijin, the Shinto god of thunder and lightning in Japanese mythology. Her name card further emphasizes this theme, depicting a giant heavenly eye in the clouds to represent the storm and her enlightenment. Now, I know that practically speaking, A is an absolute idiot, but for the sake of this video, let's just pretend that she is wise and enlightened. On this note, Beelzebul is also associated with dreams and memories, which is not something that gets mentioned very often. Putting aside what she had going on between herself and Makoto during the story quest Transient Dreams, A's entire goal prior to her defeat at the hands of the Traveler was to surpass the flow of time with a single, perfect eternity, precisely because she did not like how time erodes away all memories of the past. Thus, she sought to pursue stillness in an unchanging moment, calculating that despite the temporary suffering inflicted upon her people, it would ultimately be for their greater good. Because, of course, humans are not divine like her, and so they cannot hope to handle the inescapable loss induced by the flow of time.
Waking world, you seem woven from the stuff of dreams. All shall fade away.
A seems to understand very well the influence of dreams on the fundamental makeup of the physical world, and this is something which I hope the Traveler will inquire her about during the Inazuma event when version 5.4 comes around. This is why I believe that A and Makoto belong to some kind of species that is closely related to angels, and perhaps that species was the predecessor to the modern-day yokai found in Inazuma. Since the angels were followers of the Moon Sisters, and the likelihood of those sisters being draconic in nature has increased significantly in light of the recent information we got about the Shattered Moon, I wonder if this means that A and Makoto have draconic origins. Perhaps their birth is similar to Ejiria's as it is described in the Wings of Merciful, Wrathful Waters. Nonetheless, there is one obvious counterpoint to this theory, and it is the fact that I have mostly utilized design aspects found on the Shogun puppet in an attempt to decipher the origins of her creator, A. Of course, A and the Shogun are very distinct, and while the latter was created to perfectly embody the former's ideal, what applies to one doesn't necessarily apply to the other. After all, the Shogun is just a puppet, like Scaramouche. Furthermore, when the Shogun transforms into her Magatsu Mitaki Narukami no Mikoto, gaining all of her eyes and horns, this change in appearance might not be a reflection of A and Makoto's nature. Instead, this could very well be the Shogun calling upon the power of the Divine Throne. At the end of the day, the Electro Throne was forged from the authority of the Dragon of Lightning, and so its power should naturally be draconic. We can see this effect manifest with the Pyro Archon Mavuika, who uses Chiquotl's power, which manifests as a dragon head and wings on her motorcycle. Dragons have horns, so it makes sense for the Shogun to have horns if she is using their power. And the palm eyes on the hands she summons are also found on Nouvillette, who is an actual ancient dragon. Then we have the fact that Morax also has the exact same platform hands which the Shogun summons during her boss fight, and we all know how much draconic imagery Morax has. I already talked about this in my Demon God's Origins video, but regardless of whether you think he used to be an ancient dragon or not, it is undeniable that Zhongli looks very draconic. Does this mean that Baal and Beelzebul could be the Electro Dragon Sovereign? No. I still think the Electro Dragon is the mysterious beast sealed by the Thunder Sakura beneath Kanazuka, but we are going to have to wait and see. I hope Hoyoverse haven't forgotten about the beast beneath Kanazuka because I feel like they did. At any rate, we have reached the end of this video. Fingers crossed that we get to learn more about the Raiden Twins in version 5.4. Once again, I would like to thank Tokyo Treat and Sakurako for sponsoring this video. They are genuinely good products if you are looking to try out either popular or authentic Japanese snacks. Check them out in this video's description, and you can use code MyNameForNow for $5 off on your first order and support the channel while you're at it. Speaking of supporting the channel, huge thanks to everyone who does that on Patreon, and thank you for watching till the end. For now, I've been MyNameForNow, that's the code, $5 off, link in the description, and I will catch you in the next one. Take care.